Is the Israel-Hamas war spiraling into a wider conflict? We have asked this question time and again since the conflict began. But as the war rages on, civilians are being killed, and Hezbollah is threatening to escalate the fighting. And now the possibility of a wider inferno in West Asia is looking very, very real. Because just look at what's happening on the ground. It is alarming. At Israel's northern border, there's tension on the Lebanese frontier. The situation is volatile, and Israel is on high alert.
We are in a high state of readiness in the north, in a very high state of alert, to respond to any event today and in coming days. Iran continues to pursue a negative invasive policy. It encourages proxies on its behalf. With Iranian weapons, it delivers them, exactly as it did in Ukraine, Yemen and Iraq against American forces. It continues to do so against the state of Israel, and it is trying to move us away from the war in Gaza.
Here, Hezbollah, the Iran-backed ally of Hamas, and Israel have exchanged heavy fire. Violence spiked after Hezbollah claimed to have attacked 19 Israeli military positions in northern Israel. They attacked with drones, mortar fire and suicide drones. Hezbollah's attacks have stoked fears that the Israel-Hamas war could become a regional one. The Israeli military said it retaliated with warplanes and helicopter gunships. But since the Israel-Hamas war began on October 7th, Hezbollah has taken steps to keep Israel's military busy on the country's border with Lebanon. And today, Hezbollah's chief has warned Israel that cross-border fighting could escalate. Its leader, Hassan Nasrallah, has said that the fighting on the Lebanon-Israel border would not be limited to the scale seen until now. This marks Hezbollah's first-ever admission of an attack on Israeli forces using drones. It comes just days after the group said that for the first time, it used a surface-to-air missile against an Israeli drone. In a statement, Hezbollah said its drones attacked the headquarters of the Israeli battalion in the Sheba Farms area. Remember, Israel has held the Sheba Farms area since the 1967 war, but Syria and Lebanon claim the area belongs to Lebanon. Then, the Al-Qassam Brigade said that its fighters in southern Lebanon were behind the shelling of the northern Israeli town of Kiryat Shimona. Here, 4 rockets landed in an industrial area, injuring 2 people and damaging buildings. But who are the Qassam Brigades? They are Hamas's military wing. On October 7th, around 1,200 members of the Qassam Brigades were responsible for breaking out of Gaza and making it into Israel, where they took part in the attack. Reports say there have been 20,000 and 25,000 fighters. Take a look. This is the group currently holding hostages inside Gaza as part of Hamas. They allegedly receive financial as well as tactical support from Iran. With Hamas getting support from Hezbollah, there is another group that has stepped up to help Hamas. Yemen's Iran-backed Houthi rebels. They have launched multiple missile and drone attacks at Israel since the war broke out, and that includes the use of medium-range ballistic missiles. They are located more than 2,000 kilometers away, and Israel is at the very limit of even the longest range of Yemeni missiles. The Houthis have already entered the war. They have declared Israel to be an enemy. The plight of the Palestinian civilians caught in the crossfire in Gaza has triggered growing outrage throughout West Asia. There is further inflaming the region, particularly as violence spills beyond the Gaza Strip, affecting West Bank, Israel's northern border, the Red Sea, Iraq and Syria. Even Israel's allies, including US forces, find themselves in the line of repeated drone and rocket fire. Since October 17th, Iranian-backed militia have reportedly launched 28 rocket and drone attacks on the US forces in Iraq and Syria. In response to the attacks on US troops, President Biden authorized an airstrike just last week. The strike targeted a weapons depot in eastern Syria. However, the rocket and drone attacks have continued. Meanwhile, US Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin has indicated that the US might conduct more bombing raids to deter Iran's proxies. If the US responds with greater force, it remains uncertain whether pro-Iran militias will escalate the crisis. Analysts are now drawing parallels to World War I and warning about risks involved when one party's attempt to deter an adversary could be misinterpreted as an act of aggression. One stray rocket and the entire region could blow up in conflict. According to Western media reports, the potential spread of the Gaza conflict largely depends on Iran and the militant groups that it has allegedly equipped. Western intelligence officials say that Iran may not be seeking a direct war with the US. Instead, Tehran aims to use its partners to destabilize Israel and exert pressure on the Western world. There is a growing worry that Iran's proxies might intensify their attacks to gauge the response of Israeli and US forces. Analysts say, in fact, they warn that these skirmishes could gradually spiral out of control, potentially triggering an unintended and wider conflict that is feared by one and all. Should this nightmare scenario materialize, the consequences could be devastating and unpredictable. It is truly a dangerous moment in history. And to discuss this and a lot more, joining me now on the show is Mr. John Erath. He is the Senior Policy Director for the Center for Arms Control and Non-Proliferation. Mr. Erath is joining us live from Washington. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Mr. Erath, how do you view what's happening in West Asia? Is this now a multi-front war? Hamas, Israel, Lebanon, Iraq, Iran, who all are now the stakeholders in this war in your view?
It's, of course, a very dangerous situation. And I think you have correctly cited the dangers that the war could expand beyond the current conflict in Gaza to involve other actors in the region. What we're seeing is all of the various groups in the region that are backed by and supported by Iran are now taking action against Israel. This comes with dangers that the war will expand. But at this point, I think I would be cautiously optimistic that it would not, because if you're looking at groups like Hezbollah in Lebanon, they have nothing to gain by a full-scale war with Israel, quite a lot to lose. So I think they're going to keep a lid on the level of violence in the short term.
Right, but what does a multi-front war mean for the region? Will there be any hope for a ceasefire if multiple players are involved?
It certainly makes things more complicated and more difficult. There was hope initially for a ceasefire, but that was diminished by the actions of Hamas and later Hezbollah in further attacks against Israeli civilians. Israel's reaction has further diminished the chance for an early ceasefire. I think everybody wants there to be a ceasefire, but you have parties in the region to the conflict that seem to be set on the course of violence in the short term. So I don't know what hope there is at this point.
Right, Mr. Erath, thank you so much for all your analysis and thanks for joining us on Gravitas tonight. WION World is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news updates on the move.